Our darshan today is longtime member Mark Bershak, who not only is a longtime member, but is also a longtime certified Toastmaster. He met his wonderful wife Betty at Adat, Ariel, and married her here 42 years ago on Christmas Eve. Both Mark and Betty are very involved in the Muscular Dystrophy Association and have been honored by that association 3 times. He would characterize his approach to the Bible as unorthodox. And I think for those of us who've had the privilege of studying with Mark, we would agree. And he enjoys studying with myself and with Rabbi Silver at the Torah on Tuesday classes, where he looks to us for new insights, and as he gracefully said, occasionally he gets them. It is a pleasure to be able to share the Bima with him this morning.
Thank you, Rabbi Bernhardt. I only wish my mother could be here to hear that beautiful introduction. Okay. Zachor was one of 2 alternatives I had to choose from. I chose it because I found it fraught with issues for me to dissect, such as what are our obligations to even the least of our brethren, and how long can a nation hold a grudge against another nation? In Zachor, we are admonished to wipe out even the memory of the Amalekites. Who were the Amalekites? In the Bible, the Amalekites were the descendants of Amalek. They descended from nomads from the south of Canaan who inhabited the Sinai Peninsula and who controlled the various oases. Amalek was a descendant of Esau, the oldest son of Isaac, and the father of the Edomites. He is also reputed to be an ancestor of Haman, which is why the subject comes up this time of year. The Bible portrays the Amalekites as being exceptionally cruel, attacking Israelites who were exhausted from journeying from the exile in Egypt. These nomads, we are told, were antagonists of the Israelites, who frequently and persistently attacked Moses' people when they least expected it. Nevertheless, these battles served to strengthen the Israelites as fighters and believers in God's ability to provide defenses as long as one had faith. And according to Ex Hayim, the confrontation gave the Israelites their first dose of real-life brutality, diminishing their idealism. The battle against the Amalekites started in Rephidim. They were the first to attack the Israelites after Moses led them out of Egypt. In Exodus 17:8-16, the Lord gives Moses the staff of God, which allows him to stand on the top of a hill and raise his hands. As long as his hands were raised, the Israelites continued winning in the fight against the Amalekites. God is also quoted in this passage, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek from heaven." From this writing, a genocide began against the Amalekites by the Israelites. In Zachor, the following is reiterated, as Deuteronomy is prone to do, and attributed to God. "Remember what Amalek did to thee by the way when he came forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way and smote the hindmost of thee, all that were enfeebled in thy rear, when thou thought thou wast faint, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. And therefore thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget." One source sees anti-Semitism in this situation, saying the assault was nothing more than hatred against the Jews and the emergence of the ugly phenomenon known as anti-Semitism. That remains as much an enigma and at the same time a serious threat to this very day. I'm not sure about that. I'm convinced that any invader would have treated much the same way, especially if they felt grossly outnumbered. Remember, there were 600,000 of us. Clearly, however, these Amalekites were not fighting fair. The situation reminds me of the Revolutionary War. Consider, seeing as both our rabbis have a special connection to England, the redcoats fuming with righteous indignation about these bloody rebels hiding behind trees and bushes and picking off their troops. Why, everybody knows any respectable army dons colorful uniforms, lines up in a straight line, facing the opponents, and marches in an orderly fashion, firing only when ordered to do so. But aha, one might say, the Amalekites did not just employ guerrilla warfare against our troops, they attacked the most vulnerable. Question: how come they were so vulnerable? During the Vietnam conflict, the Viet Cong found it more effective to maim our people than to kill them, due to the fact that for every maimed soldier, several others were taken out of action to take care of the victim. This impeded the advance of our troops, but as Americans, we accepted this tactical liability because we value human life. What measures, if any, did the Israelites take to protect our side's most vulnerable? Did they secure the women, the children, and the elderly? Clearly, we didn't protect these people very well. One source asks, what about the Israelites who were at the head of the line? Did they turn back to help their weakest people? Could our remembering be to teach us about our obligations of even the least effective in our ranks? Question: did Israelites invade Amalek territory with an army faint and weary, totally unprepared to fight effectively? Did they really expect the enemy to give them a few days to rest up and get organized before engaging them in battle? If so, it was indeed a miracle we won. Perhaps the Amalekites committed a gross tactical error, foolishly stripping us of our least capable. Maybe we didn't expect any resistance at all. Our God made it abundantly clear that their lease was up and they should vacate the premises forthwith. Maybe their God told them otherwise. Clearly, the will of heaven is subject to different interpretations by different cultures. Anyhow, I have a problem with eternal enmity, which makes it a mitzvah to kill an Amalekite. Consider the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition, blaming Jews for the death of Jesus centuries after the event. Pick any pogrom, and you'll find morons screaming Christ killers about people more than a millennium removed from Christ. Josephus makes a strong point in identifying Haman as an Amalekite. Whoops, should have given you a chance. So that he can attribute Haman's hatred of the Jews to a family feud or a personal grudge, rather than to the Jews' distinctiveness or misanthropy, or to an eternal Jewish-Gentile conflict. But the Jews of Haman's generation did not wipe out the Amalekites. In trying to destroy the Jews of Persia, one could argue that Haman had a reason for a grudge, but no excuse for taking it out on Jews several generations removed. That's why I question the notion of eternal enmity. A child is presumably born innocent of the sins of his or her parents and certainly his or her ancestors. No one should be targeted simply because of his or her ethnicity. Amalek has, however, become a symbol of pure evil, the kind we must constantly battle against. His totality represents the worst characteristics of humanity. In short, he is, as Rambam would say, a typology of evil. So the nation of Amalek cannot be redeemed because it is mythic. So what can we take out of all of this? Eternal enmity against a particular people leads only to an endless chain of death and human suffering. Hatred begets only more hatred, and the inevitable goal of eternal enmity is genocide. The proper response to Amalek is not to emulate him, but to oppose hatred and promote compassion. This I have learned right here. Show compassion to the weak and the needy, even in war, and pursue the objective of peace. Face it, you've got to bury the hatchet before you can ever smoke the peace pipe. Shabbat Shalom.